Hello and welcome to the Brilliant People podcast by executive search firm Assertitude. On this show, we share stories and ideas from the most brilliant leaders and investors to the most determined thinkers and doers defining their fields and our times. I'm your host, Linnea Jungnelius. Today, our distinguished guest is Ram Charan, best-selling author and longtime advisor to many of the world's top boards and CEOs. In fact, not a day will go by when he doesn't talk to a CEO. It's no surprise Fortune magazine calls Ram, quote, the most influential consultant alive. Even now in his mid-80s, Ram continues a nonstop, globe-trotting schedule in pursuit of his life's work, bringing out the best in companies and the people who lead and govern them. Also with me is Kevin O'Neill, someone who rivals Ram in frequent flyer miles and personal purpose. Kevin is our co-founder and managing partner at Assertitude, overseeing the firm's consumer and industrial practices in recruiting executives and unleashing human potential. Today, I'll be drawing out both of their wisdom and personal experience as we explore topics on the state of the business world, leading effectively, and building teams. Ram, Kevin, I'm thrilled that your paths crossed here in New York City today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Linnea.
It's wonderful to be here with one of my heroes and mentors and friends.
First off, I need to know where both of you flew in from today.
I flew in last night from India.
And I flew in last night from Dallas, Texas.
And I walked down from the Upper East Side, so a little bit shorter path than both of you.
I think Ram wins.
That's it. We live in a world that faces many complex and interconnected challenges. So, Ram, can you start by painting a picture for us of the outside forces that are affecting every business in today's economic environment?
One of the most important today is the global geopolitical disorder. Simultaneously with it is the rapid advancement of technologies, because AI is transforming, totally changing the domain technologies in biotech, in aviation, in infrastructure, in every walk of life. What people have not understood is that the AI is at the center of the geopolitical disorder, particularly in the armed conflict. The winning of an armed conflict is going to be done by data, by AI, and by symmetry or asymmetry of data. That has never happened before. The third one is talent versus just personnel. Talent requires continuous upgrading, continuous adaptation of new trends. And now the last one is the currency usage, exchange rates, control of them, linkage of them is under heavy, heavy transformation. It's under the radar. People don't see it. So these are the various things going on. Every CEO who's particularly large, particularly multinational, has this job very complex. It requires a different mind. It requires a different training. And it requires that the CEO has a team worthy of this challenge. Doing a better job of finding, training, and selecting is going to help a nation succeed. Because a nation is always built by leaders. Leaders, not just businesses, leaders in politics, leaders in sports, leaders in government. And so one of the things I like to add, the continued war between Washington and Beijing. Economic war and preparation for a military war. Both sides are explicit. They cannot win the war without the collaboration with the CEOs. When they have armed conflict, the government runs it with the military. When you have economic war, government can facilitate, can help, can negotiate with the rival, but the war is run by businesses, and that's a new phenomenon. This is a very complex gamut, and this complexity changes very rapidly. Having all said that, the AI technology is very helpful. So the most critical thing right now for every CEO is to take this complexity and crystallize what the focus of the company needs to be. And what are the three most critical priorities? And what are the 5, 6 people or 10 people who will help this CEO execute those priorities?
And I want to pick up on one word you used there, which was focus, because I've heard you say strategy is out and focus is in. What do you mean by that?
Yes. Focus is something you can see, you can quantify, you can compare. In a strategy, for the same company, and I've done this, you put 10 direct reports to the CEO and say, write down your strategy. You have 10 answers. I've done that. And the CEO is absolutely chagrined. Yes, I've told them many times, yeah, but that's a piece of paper. It's not here. And a strategy is a concept. Until you crystallize those key priorities and action it, a strategy doesn't mean anything. So you have a focus and you have a goal. And whatever means you have, AI included, define your, let us say, 3 most critical priorities to be executed, and by whom. Are they on the same page?
So within that context, what are the world's most effective CEOs focused on that ineffective ones are not?
What I see is absolute clarity on mission. So that purpose is crystal clear. As Ram said, it's focus. It's everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing at every moment and what is the time constraint or time-bound element of that. So it's the old SMART goals. As far as goals need to be clear, measurable, attainable. Ram, help me with the R.
It has to be specific. And it has the milestones.
So the great CEOs are setting a clear vision for their team. Everyone knows what their role is and how it interlocks. One of my favorite CEOs, the thing that I've watched him do over the years is repeat incessantly what the mission is to his team. He has Harvard MBAs on his team. He has every walk of life, smart, capable execs. Yet sometimes you feel as if you're in 5th grade because he will repeat things over and over again just to be certain that the team is aligned. He's always checking in the rearview mirror to ensure that there's followers, because you're not a leader if nobody's actually following you. So being clear about the mission and ensuring that your team has the tools necessary to be successful is what I'm seeing the CEOs of today. Whereas the others are just kind of focusing more on amorphous, big picture, non-specific things that are candidly not getting tangible results.
A lot of hot air.
The cult of personality.
Yeah.
What are the practical rituals or systems that you put into place to make sure you're continuously, setting your focus, getting to the right focus, refocusing?
In this world, if the CEO is missing these 2 habits, he or she will not succeed. First, do whatever the CEO has to do to think 10 years out. Look at the drivers of the next 10 years. Get help from people who do all this work, where the technology is going, where the population going, where the need is going, where the AI altering the whole domain technology. Get those analyses, listen to it, see it, and see what is the intersection of those changes 10 years out, 20 years out. For example, Tim Cook looks 12 years out. I have that. You got to cut through from the day-to-day stuff and see what factors are creating the future. Who are creating the future? Technology, the scientists, whoever. Get help from the people who study. Second part, look outside in, not inside out. Every single CEO has been trained through the hierarchy, inside out. They have done incremental things. They've never been forced to see the quantum shifts and quantum jobs and quantum reorganizing the focus of their function from they come from. These 2 are absolutely mandatory. Today, in the sea of data, trends, predictiveness, we can get that and see what could be 3, 4 options for a focus. Is your focus today obsolete? Will it become obsolete? What's the new focus coming in?
Ram, what company do you think is the best example of an outside-in focused business?
The one that come to mind that is built in this way, all the outside intelligence do that. And that is KOCH, Coke. They have a full intelligence unit that is next door to the CEO's office. That's what they do. In many ways, you have Apple, you have very clearly Microsoft, no doubt in my mind, and Meta. These people are very up to date what's happening on the outside. I love the chief legal guy in Microsoft. They call him the president. Is probably the most tuned to the outside areas. His name is Mr. Smith. So you have people like that who continually scan outside world.
Let's pivot now to how can CEOs get the best out of their teams so that they can execute, right? Because great big ideas are, every company has them, but they're nothing if you can't bring them to life.
What I see in reality, the focus and priorities. At the same time, getting everybody on the same page. These things go simultaneously. They are not you do this once and then second. They all go simultaneously. So now the key part for this leader of the team is, as Kevin said, repeat, 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 they're on the same page. Now, getting the best out of them, first is the mindset they believe in it and not fake it. You're able to find that out. The second part is, and many CEOs fail on this, can they collaborate? Nothing can be done unless your team has collaboration. To have collaboration, you must come to terms that every team has conflicts. How do you resolve the conflicts? If you don't, you're going to be slow. At the end of the day, people respond to KPIs and incentives. Are they consistent? Are they synchronized? The greatest problem a CEO has, do you have enough courage to give honest, realistic feedback to each of your team members and make sure it sticks? Many CEOs use HR people to do that. No, you have to do it. Number 2, they do it, they don't follow through. Number 3, they have come to the conclusion a member needs to go. They actually delay. CEOs who came from staff jobs and they don't have the courage to sit down and say, this is what I want you to do. Would you do it or would you not? And they get ransomed, by the way, because he's a rainmaker, I can't fire him. No, you got to make a priority. Team wins, individuals don't.
Kevin, Ram shared a lot about solving conflict, communication, building relationships, collaboration. Look, it's all people dynamics, right? So in your view, because frequently you're in this seat, right, of you're talking to the CEO, you're talking to the people on their team, what do the teams want out of their CEO to be enabled and empowered to perform?
Yeah, I think we've talked a little bit about this. Obviously, they want clarity. They want to know what the mission is. They want to know what the purpose is. And they want to know that the CEO has the courage to stay the course and continue and not waver, so they can actually do their job and allow the byproduct to actually take hold. So there's going to be a kind of consistent leadership. I think what they're also looking for is vulnerability. They want to know the person. The day of the cult of personality CEO may be gone or leaving us. The person that has, all the answers. In this world, it's hard to have all the answers because the answers are changing, the questions are changing constantly. The CEO who demonstrates vulnerability and authenticity and allows them to actually feel the teams to feel a human connection, those are the ones that are thriving. The distant corner office ivory tower CEO who does not let their teams in are the ones that we see less successful. We have some specific case studies of I've got it sort of leader. who doesn't got it. When something turns, all of a sudden they look for the support of their team. They want to phone the friend, and they've lost them, or they never had them. So we win together. I think that what the teams really are looking for is somebody who is going to be a fierce advocate for the mission, support them, continue to push them, coax them, provide clarity and energy, but above all, be human.
We've talked a lot about why CEOs win. Let's talk a little bit more about when they don't work out, because again, you've touched on a number of things. It could be lacking vision. It could be resisting change. It could be failings around the team, the culture, the communications, or stakeholder relationships, and so on. Problems arise, right, when there's a mismatch between an executive's capabilities, like you pointed out, and what's required to get a company through its next phase of growth. Kevin, if a company is uncertain about whether a leader is working out or not, and they're thinking about making a change or starting to get the sense that they should be, what steps can they follow to assess the situation and get clarity around that?
The first thing is don't wait, because once you've started to feel that somebody may not be working out, whether it be the CFO or the COO or the chief commercial officer, the horse has likely left the proverbial barn. So time does not help these. So I think it's about, with strategic partners, whether it be in the search community, advisors, consultants, HR consultants and such, clearly define what success looks like for the role that the incumbent does not appear to be succeeding in. And from there, you have the opportunity to remake what that role looks like in the vision of what the company aims to be, not today and not yesterday, but 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And put that laundry list in. It's the Christmas list.
How do we take it from feeling to more clarity, knowing? I think that's what every business is trying to get to, right? Like, what are the tools, the playbooks, the actions to take to understand, is the person we have internally better than or equal to or less than the external market for talent for this role?
I think what you have to look at is it a will problem or a skill problem? Does the incumbent possess the requisite skills to be successful in this role? Do they have the skills that the best examples in the outside market would have? If so, it's a will problem. It's a culture fit. It's a personality. Do they have the drive? Do they have the grit? If it's a skill issue, you have to determine if that person can be upskilled to not only be successful in the role today, but what it's going to be called for in the future. If it's a will issue, it's going to be more difficult. People can change, just it takes longer than you usually have for them to change. So what I would say is, time and time again, if you're getting the sense that we just have the right resume but the wrong person, it's already time to start looking at the external market.
That's a great framework. I like the will versus skill mental model of how you could look at it. I think one of the things that you mentioned that I want to touch on a little bit further is, you said one thing to do. And I've heard you talk about this before, which is, really being focused on the real priorities. And I think you mentioned, Jack Welch did 9 great things in 19 years. Or something.
That's correct. 9 initiatives in 19 years.
Yes. Let's pivot gears a little bit. So in order to even get into the CEO seat, right, it takes a lot of work, and, there's different, traits and behaviors that we see in those types of people. And I think commonly one of those traits is a little bit of ego, actually. And, it can drive people to be tremendously successful, to achieve really great things, but it can also become a hindrance. How can leaders balance ego with humility?
What I've seen is that the greatest leaders have this mindset that it's not about me. One of my mentors shared with me many years ago that there's a difference between humiliation, which is thinking less of oneself, and humility, which is thinking of oneself less. The greatest leaders have figured that out, whether overtly or just intuitively, that we win together, we share credit, we celebrate successes, and it doesn't have to be about me. Ego is not a bad thing in and of itself. Ego drives us. We want to do better. We want the trophy. We want to compete. However, there are just legion examples of when we've assigned or we've attached some element of power to it or some element of kind of human fear and the desire to be seen to that. It's about how do we properly right size it? How do we be grounded? Do we know who we are and our place? And the best leaders are those that recognize that and they capitalize upon that. And they do it in such a way that it is not about them, but it's about a higher purpose.
I think what we see a lot, right, is people come in and they look to drive a transformation quickly, but in the process, they leave a wake, right? And you're frequently pulled in to reduce the wake, not reduce the speed, but reduce the wake, right, which is super difficult. So how do you do that? And how do you get people to drive transformation in a way that gets the job done without all of that wake behind them?
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but I've been called into a number of these situations over the years. One comes to mind of an operating executive that we'd recruited to a private equity client. He scorecarded very well. He had all of the requisite skills. He had done the right sort of jobs in the past and so forth. And when he stepped into this role, his focus on acceleration left a lot of bodies strewn, not quite dead, but on the way out. And I got the phone call that this is somebody we'd like you to sit down with and kind of find out what's happening, because we need these companies to actually survive, not just be completely gutted. And I did it. And I first of all listened to what this person had to say, and he walked in with all of the right elements on his scorecard. He was assessing people. He was doing it with agility, with rigor. He was clear about what he was trying to accomplish, but he forgot his humanity. He forgot that what he's dealing with are people, and people are not robots, and they respond to different inputs. And it became clear to me that he was losing good people because he was not connecting with them in a manner that they were responding to. And my job became to remind him, we all need those people around us to tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm paying attention to what's going on here. Have you considered looking at this from a different direction, from a different point of view? This person was willing to take that feedback. I started getting phone calls saying, what has happened? Has he started doing yoga or meditating or seeing a new doctor who's prescribing something that is keeping his blood pressure at a moderate level? But truthfully, it was just a reminder, this guy is one of my heroes now. When we see each other, we have a laugh because in some small way, I think I've played a part in helping remake his career.
You did.
What an incredible story, and lessons there around motivating and inspiring people to change as much as making the changes yourself, right? And Ram, all leaders are coaches, and there was some coaching that happened there, right? But few people in the world have as much expertise in coaching as you do. Are there other lessons you could give about how CEOs can become better coaches to their teams, or how boards can become better coaches to their CEOs?
I think the very simple thing, and the simple thing is that figuring it out precisely what coaching the CEO needs at that time. That is more important than the coaching.
Listening for the signals, listening for the inputs. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of coaching in my career and also be coached, whether it be sports as a kid and young adult or even now. I think the greatest coaches are the greatest listeners. They don't walk in with a pre-planned pre-formatted playbook necessarily. They have a framework, but they're listening to the inputs from their player, from their coachee, and they're responsive to what is coming back. This is pitching and catching.
When Jack Welch became CEO, on the board at the time of GE was a very celebrated CEO of Citigroup, Walter Wriston, tall fellow. And he said to Jack, "You will be the last one to know." Remember that. Satya Nadella, he becomes CEO. And everybody knows Microsoft had become arrogant. So he coined this, from knowing all to learning all. You see that in Microsoft today.
Knowing all to learning all.
So when you're
Yes.
working with the CEO, you see, is the bad news reaching him or her? The many of these things that the listening part is the central part. And listening actively, searching. The problem when CEO become very successful, it used to be normal gossip in the 80s that if a CEO makes the cover of Fortune, it's the beginning of his decline. Normal gossip. And here, people become very successful. They seem to think they know it all. And people fear to tell the CEO the bad news. That fear is a real problem. They don't get the news what's happening. So then the decline begins. But today, the activist shareholder is going to catch it.
So again, back to deep listening and making sure that you have that trusted seat so that people feel comfortable coming to you and also sharing things. Another critical skill for leaders, let alone person, is influencing others. We all do it all day long in work and also in life. Ram, you once told Jack Welch that he was dead wrong and you got him to change his mind.
Change your decision.
What advice can you offer CEOs on influencing others?
I don't know I can say much about it. The people who open other people's eyes have a huge impact on influencing others. See, the idea is not that I want to influence somebody. Is in my contact with somebody as a CEO, how do you help that person become better? How do you solve his problem? I think that's the kind of thing somebody needs to do. But there are many other ways that people can. Every CEO should see every encounter in which you build trust, you have people talk to you more freely, because the fact you are a CEO has an aura, and people want to please you. Create that atmosphere people can level with you. That's the key thing in a human being.
Ram, I know smarter decision making is something that you've thought a lot about. With speed of change being such a top concern for CEOs today, what's the best path to get to the right answers, and how can leaders make the tough calls quickly?
Well, the first part is nobody's ever sure of the right answer. There are a couple of things everybody thinks. One of them is what the counteraction is going to be by whom and from whom. They think about that. And that leads to seeing what the risk is. At the same time, they know what is the risk of not making that decision. The key here is they don't get lost in circular reasoning. Many do. And therefore, they become indecisive. But no decision, before it's implemented, is the right one. It's all probabilistic. They hedge it. They have risks. That in case it turns out wrong, what they will do, they do all that.
So we've talked a lot about making decisions, and making big decisions takes courage. Kevin, how can CEOs access courage to do the right thing and make the call when the call needs to be made?
Well, first of all, I think people need to surround themselves with trusted advisors, a small group of people who have the interest of the executive in mind and at heart, and can be objective, right? We'll tell them the truth regardless of the consequences. They're not invested to the point where they cannot tell the truth willingly or freely. The courage is interesting because if there's something that the CEO has never done before, and they're wondering what to do in that situation, they should enlist these advisors. Hey, let me run something by you, sort of thing. The Rams of the world and other similarly situated executives, let's say. Once they've done it, however, they've run a transformation playbook. They just have to get after it. The courage comes from knowing that you can do it, seeing the success of doing something and repeating those behaviors and those actions and having trust and faith in that that process will play out again. But I think it's important that you curate your decision-making with that small group of advisors, the trusted insiders that are going to look out for you and help you avoid some of those potholes that inevitably are going to be thrown at you.
So you can go externally and that can give you assurance. Is there anything internally that you find people do to access courage within them?
No, I think you got to consider first decisions in the business, separate from decisions internally to the company. Third, decisions that involve external constituencies, regulators, and so on and so on. In business, I love what Warren Buffett does. It's in my book. He gave the interview. When he is buying a company, he gets two Wall Street firms. One makes the case against it, and another makes the case for it. Whichever looks promising to him gets the business. Point, it used to be in the past where people had a red team and a blue team, and they have to compete. Larger mistakes are being made in acquisitions. You see that we talked about Pfizer. There are others where companies have been hurt badly. And here, for somehow, the board members are not able to check it. Declining an acquisition already pretty well approved is like firing a CEO. Best example, Randy, the CEO of E18, bought those assets from Time Warner at a huge debt, close to $60 billion. Company has not yet recovered. The stock price has gone very badly, a lot of debt. And those assets being divested. The board did not stop it. And eventually, the activist shareholder came in and Randy was asked to go. Here, a CEO needs an opposite viewpoint in every business consequential decision. In areas which involve politics, Washington, etc., he needs two experts, not one, who give you opposite viewpoints.
Two opposite viewpoints. Check. We should all be looking at things from multiple directions. Ram, the most difficult challenge on which many boards fail is picking the right successor to existing CEOs. How do you help CEOs and boards approach succession planning, and how do you build that future preparedness?
Some boards are now active in doing a rigorous succession planning. It's very few boards. Those who do, they have a small group of experienced people. And they really now go inside the company, meet the people. But the people are proposed by the CEO. That means the filter is being used by the CEO criteria. That needs to be checked. Because what worked in the past may not work in the future. So I'll give you practice that's being done. These 2 or 3 board members who are going to be members of the committee, they got to go to the field and do that. So I wrote about the succession at Coca-Cola, and some very big people on the board went around the world, met the people. The first round they did the succession candidates interviews, very well done. Same candidate reviewed by 2 directors and said none is going to make it in the first round. Second round, people from private equity, big on the boards, big guys. They went around the world, met, spent time, and that's how they chose Quincy, the new CEO, who's been here now almost 7, 8 years. I think he's done a great job.
Mm.
So they have to invest time. They need to know what they're looking for. So I love the selection of Satya Nadella because I know a few things. There were about 20 names proposed, 2 search firms. And the committee sorted out and came to 2 candidates. One outsider with a CEO experience, one Satya Nadella. Satya Nadella at the time is a division person. Now, what makes this committee so special? That it cleaned up all the criteria. So what is one single criteria to choose among the 2? So I happened to be listening on this directly from the chairman. The key need of the company was what technology to bet on. That was the predominant criteria at that stage. So he bet on Azure. He bet on again an OpenAI. He changed the culture from know-it-all to learning all. From $30 stock, $34 stock to 400 plus.
You talked about people again, and we've touched a little bit on this, which is to move quickly on people decision and how important timing and speed is. And delaying a change obviously can intensify issues and severely impact growth. I know in private equity, this is even more magnified. There was a study by General Atlantic, for example, in deals where they made a CEO mishire, the average IRR dropped by as much as 82%. And when they got the change right in the first year, the average IRR was 6 times greater. Ram, I know you worked on this together with Anish. Kevin, why do companies fail to move quickly on people, and what steps can be taken to become more front-footed and proactive and decisive with those decisions?
Well, simply put, because it's hard. Changing somebody out is hard. It doesn't feel good. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's the riskiest thing a business can do is change the leader. Now, risk is a two-way street. There's downside risk, but there's also upside risk, and you pointed to that. Let's think of an example where a private equity firm is contemplating an investment, and there is an existing CEO who is selling that business or part of the team that's selling that business. And more often than not, the new investor, the sponsor, they want continuity and they want to buy that person that has led this company to the place where it is now, where they're willing to write a check. The problem is that the strategy may change, the markets may be different, the person that's selling the company may be a glorified example of the one that was actually running it. They show well, but the substance may be lacking. We see this countless times. Many firms that we've seen, they rely upon the strategy of hope. We hope they work out, and hope is not a strategy. Something along the lines of 2/3 of CEOs get changed out in the first 24 months of an investment. So that would lead one to believe that the best practice would be to start early, start in the diligence process, start in that pre-deal process to assess what the external market looks like alongside of the internal option. And when you're contemplating this investment is the right time to determine, or shortly after you've made that investment, it's the right time to determine whether you have the right leaders in place. Data does not lie, and it's unemotional. The sooner they get to the right leader and the right leader gets the right leaders in place, the better for all involved. The monetization and the wealth creation opportunity is magnified. And we see people sit on their hands hoping that something is going to change, and they will only take that bitter pill when it becomes unbearable. My job frequently is to help those decision makers move a little bit faster on that. Show them examples of other successes. Remind them of examples of times in the past where they've both acted or failed to act, and what were the outcomes of those behaviors. And time again, those that move faster are getting a better outcome.
Mm. So if I'm sitting on the other end and listening to this conversation, I'm going to go and I'm going to ask myself, with this deal or, with this person in my business, are we uncertain? How can we get right answers quickly? And can we make the right call now? Or what do we need to know and by when to make the right decision? And almost put a deadline on yourself so that you don't delay. But what I want to ask you is, look, I'm sitting here, I'm saying, great, so you want me to get started earlier, but how do I do that? How do I evaluate individuals and in depth, particularly look in the example you gave, right? Pre-deal. Maybe I don't have full access. So what are the ways and that the best-in-class companies go about assessing talent at that stage?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're frequently called in to do assessments of leadership teams before a check is written. There are ways of assessing these teams without full access. There's information, there's the opportunity to do deep dive referencing, cross-referencing of the investor community, the peer group CEOs, direct reports of this CEO, and corroborate the story and kind of validate, top grade that person, by and large, before you've even written the equity check. Once the deal is done, you can employ other tools, right? Once they're on the team, you can bring in some consultants who have a battery of psychometric tools, right? You can do 360s internally. You can do the Hogan type assessments and really build a more robust view of the leadership team so you can kind of get under the hood and determine whether this is either the leader or the leader and the team that's going to get this business from point A to point B. I think what it comes down to, there are a number of different ways one can go. Inaction is not an option. Making the assumption that they're just going, if you toss the keys to them with a new balance sheet and a new ownership structure, that they're going to kind of continue along the same course is unrealistic. And time again, it's proven to be a bad decision. So proactively assessing the external market, using the data available, again, a lot of data surrounding us constantly, curating that, using the professional advisory community to gather insights. Within a margin of error, you have sufficient insight to decide whether this is the leader that's going to lead the business forward or not.
Mm.
And once you've determined it's likely not, it's not.
Yep, no looking back. And of course, those are all great tools. And I think another point I want to add there to build on what you said is, again, there is somebody out there that has a talent bench, a talent pool where there's likely information that exists on those individuals, and making sure that you get to the people that have that in-depth knowledge of those people in advance. And if you're a company or you're a private equity firm, you're going to have your own pools. You're going to rely on other people outside who have pools of people. And again, how you connect the dots and make sure you have all of that.
Around the 90s in TPG, there was a gentleman named Mr. Williams. He had the veto right. Deal is good. He said people's side is no good. Deal will not be made. It's well known. Today, great job General Atlantic does. The deal is right, market is right. And most of the time, they buy companies that are going to be growing, large-scale growth. So once they acquire it, they have a separate unit of roughly 10 people. Everything, people, selection, organization structure, KPIs, compensation as one unit. No more silos. And they will do all this extensive data gathering in varieties of ways. And then they will say what are the frictions, what changes need to be made. If there is a harmony between the founder and the CEO, not so. And they actually make decisions. and they persuade the deal guys what is to be done, and they act on it. And that's how you got the numbers. If you make decisions early, you will be able to have a better IRR. They measure it.
Mm,
So they have a cadence in doing that.
absolutely. Ram, look, we've mentioned a number of important decisions that CEOs need to make, the most critical one being the CEO hire. Another important people decision, right, is around how do you develop people? And for companies to truly scale, right, they don't only need to develop great leadership teams, but they've got to get the people in the upper and middle management layers to grow and scale with the business as well. So how should CEOs think about talent development, and how do you think about personalizing talent? You've said companies do this poorly.
Well, the first thing, CEOs know there are two functions in any business. One, finance, second is people. So I have coined, how do you work the G2? And you got to work with both of them, not one at a time. When you're doing reviews, both should be there. Get the HR person to learn financial questions and vice versa. So then we say there are several ways to develop people. The direct reports, best method is the reviews and feedback. Don't wait for the annual reviews. Direct, clear, follow through. So in doing that, people must remember development is highly related to the individual who wants to develop. You can facilitate, you can offer things of that kind. So it's not becoming in companies, they rotate them, make them broader. They give them a stretch assignments. They take them out of one function, give it special projects, multiple ways. We are doing the leapfrog in some cases. And we're saying that in one company, I have the assignment myself, where I am finding inside that they can, after 6-7 years, run $1 billion business. So I'm looking at that, what I'm finding, they have done this kind of a part. In one company in America, everybody is required to have one new skill every year, and it's a part of appraisal and compensation. So you put the monkey on the back of the individual. What are you learning? And so on. Organization and talent development is now complex. It is central. Obsolescence can be very fast. You need experts in doing that now, and report directly to CEO.
Hugely important. Kevin, are there other ways that you think CEOs should think about building those teams beyond their leadership team, deeper into the business?
Yeah, I think Ram said it well. Make it everybody's priority. Everyone in the organization should have a role in developing talent around and beneath them. Let's think about where the work really is done. It's in manufacturing businesses. It's in plants and distribution centers. You think of companies like PepsiCo, who historically have done this really well. They've invested in talent. They've hired for will, and they've trained for skill, and they've moved people around in cross-functional assignments to round them out. They've almost created the concept of the stretch candidate. I believe that the CEO needs to not only encourage, but require his or her team to make that a top priority, a scorecard item for them and a metric of their success and down the chain, right? Because these companies are living beings. They have a life cycle, and we need to constantly refresh them with new talent that's going to help the business thrive in the new economy.
Wayne Calloway and Roger King are legendary from Pepsi. They built it. I see how many Pepsi people are CHROs today. How many of them are CEOs today? They build a rigorous system. Other people need to pay attention to it because the CEO drove that. And Roger King himself was the kind of person I am talking should be high level, high expertise to work with the CEO and other functions of HR to be done by other people. That was his personal job to do this. In GE, it was Bill Connerty with Welsh directly.
Ram, we're getting close to the end here, and I cannot leave you without asking a question around our mission at Assertitude, which is to unleash human potential. As you think about that phrase and you think about what that truly means, what is critical to unleash human potential? Anything else that's top of mind for you?
Remember, first, kindle the fire in the individual to where one can be. Burn that in. That will drive the engine, not only reach potential, but expand the potential. Why CEOs burn out? They don't extend their potential.
Ram, are there any leaders that are inspiring you lately?
They all do because everybody has something to say. It's my fault if I don't capture it.
Mm.
Everybody, when you talk new problem, new idea, new test.
And are there any other sources of content, books, podcasts, quotes that you use to consistently draw inspiration from?
No, I search the most recent, what is new, wherever I can get it.
Mm.
Books are helpful because I write them, but my books are timeless, basics, actionable, kind of wisdom, or tools you can use for a long time. Execution book was published in 2002. It's 2024. It's going. People meet me on the street. You Ram Charan? I say, yeah. Execution book. They stop me. Never met him. It happens to me every day somewhere in the world. So there are 4 books like that are in that timeless bestsellers.
Which ones would you call out as the more timeless ones?
Execution. What the CEO wants you to know. A leadership pipeline. An attacker's advantage. Yeah, I want to mention one more book, The Boards That Lead. It's across the globe.
Yes.
And I wrote that with the CEO, McKinsey.
Adding them all to the book stack. Ram, in each episode, we also like to define brilliance in a few ways because businesses only shine when people shine. So I'm going to hit you with a quick lightning round. If you could please fill in the blanks. Purpose is?
Yeah, purpose is lifting what you do to a new level.
Leadership is?
Yeah, leadership is selecting the right goals and get them accomplished.
Success is?
Success is not just achieving the numbers, but developing people who achieve these numbers.
Brilliant leaders are?
Brilliant leaders excel in knowing the customer, excel in getting the right people, and excel in meeting their commitments.
I perform at my best when?
I perform best when I teach in the classroom.
Ram, those are beautiful answers. Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you for one final question.
You've enjoyed an almost 60-year career having conversations with some of the most influential people on the planet. A trusted advisor, a sounding board, a consultant, a friend. If this was your last conversation, what would you want people to hear?
Mine is from the Hindu philosophy. Just you have in English dust to dust. In Hindu philosophy is haq to haq. Learn that you take nothing from here. You will leave something, and that something, according to Hindu philosophy, is sacrifice. Seek no credit. Do the best and never be obsolete.
Ram, Kevin, that was brilliant. And thank you for the great conversation, the great ideas, and, the great advice on how to approach leadership, but also just living a good life. Thank you to Ram Charan for joining us on today's episode. I hope you all walk away inspired with new ideas for how to lead your business with greater perspective on the forces that are defining the world today, the principles that create effective leaders, and the ways in which those leaders can inspire and empower their teams to become their best selves. And thanks to you, our listeners, for tuning in. That's it for this episode of the Brilliant People podcast. I'm Linnea Jungnelius. If you found this conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show. And follow Assertitude on LinkedIn for the latest insights on how to lead and perform at your best. Until next time, stay brilliant at work.